Hello there guys, and welcome back to this week's Tea Tyria. And yes, I did say Tyria because I was mentioning Tyria a lot last week and I got a lot of stick for it, and this has happened in the past. I have mentioned Tyria, and it is ear bleeding to a lot of people. So Tyria will be the new pronunciation from me. I do apologize. I do know it's Tyria. It's just I have a habit of saying Tyria, because generally I read off notes and things. So when I read it, I just read Tyria, and it's not good. But another thing you may have noticed is I said this week's Tea Tyria, and I never thought I could do it because I never thought there'll be enough to talk about weekly. But however, I have been reading up a load of different websites and joined a load of different forums and stuff, and there is tons of stuff that happens every week, and people are talking about Guild Wars 2 all over the place. Now, I thought I was an avid Guild Wars 2 fan, but apparently there are people who seriously get their I don't know, their heads into some crazy information and post it up each week. So I reckon I'll be able to fill in a podcast for each week, and Sunday is going to be the day that it's released. So Tea Tyria is going to be released every Sunday. So you can expect an episode out of me every Sunday up on this YouTube channel and up on the blog. And of course, YouTube channel does supply other needs as well as a podcast, so yes. So this week, what are we talking about this week? I'm afraid I have no guests on this week. I did ask a couple of people, but due to the topic, I didn't ask many others. But the people I did ask, they didn't respond. I assume they're too busy, or they didn't get my message, or one of these. But I will definitely try in future to have at least someone on with me, or if not, you know, I'll just make it a shorter episode or something like this. So, sorry about that, but let's get into this week's topics. So the topics for this week is the Holy Trinity system. Yes, the Holy Trinity system. Total Biscuit released a video which was very controversial. He then took down the video due to incorrect facts, and this has blew up a storm over this subject, and it's pretty crazy. The Holy Trinity. I'll explain it more when I get onto the topic, but that's the first one. The second one is the news segment, and in the news this week I'll be talking about the press NDA and my feelings on the NDA of Guild Wars 2 and my, you know, sad feelings. But yep, like the NDA and the press and the female armour screenshots. I have a couple of points to make about this, because it's been quite a topic recently from the news. And that's about it. That's basically what we're going to be going over this week. That's the main things that came out, and I thought that'll be enough to cover for a podcast to do by myself, basically. So yeah, let's get straight into the news. The female armour and how females are getting represented in Guild Wars 2. And generally, I suppose, the topics on how females get represented in fantasy games. Because in every single fantasy game, the female armor or females around are dressed down insanely. Like, absolutely insanely. I mean, if you picture women's night lady wear, if you like, or lingerie, or whatever you like to call it, make it metal, and that's basically what female armor is in all fantasy games. It's very flashy, very kinky, very showy. And personally, I think I said this briefly in the last episode, and I'm one for realism. I don't like being bare-chested, if you like, and a fireball hits me in my chest and I just take it like a man, because my chest would be on fire. Robes are kind of less realistic, but you could imagine in a fantasy world, it's all magical, you know, you don't take damage like that. It's that sort of argument towards it, but obviously it's typically aimed at, I mean, if you look at my analytics, my stats, if you like, I have 5% female viewers and 95% male. So if someone's going to be developing a game, they have to look at what their target audience is, and that's mostly going to be teenage boys. And what sells to teenage boys? Well, as we all know, sex sells to teenage boys. So if you dress down your women in your game, you're going to sell more copies. So from a marketing standpoint, it makes complete sense because they sell more copies. I mean, a lot of people do roll female characters when they are a male in real life because they prefer looking and being and playing a female, because that's what they're going to be spending hours working on. And note in this whole message, I am not intending to put innuendos here, but do with it what you will in the comments below. However, this is a serious problem, to be fair, and I'm not sure if we'd call it a problem, but it's something that should be addressed. I mean, you could have armour that's skimpy, and you could have armour that isn't, and depending on how you want to dress your character, that's, you know, how you dress it. But generally, I would prefer it if ArenaNet doesn't go down the lines of every single woman character in the whole game is dressed like this, as we've seen in the screenshots, which you could find, by the way, in the show notes, in the description below. And yeah, I feel that if you're walking around in the world and everyone's dressed like this, all the female characters dressed like this, then it's going to be a bad thing. But if it's only certain, you know, armor outfits that are like it, then, or, you know, I don't know, 50% are, 50% aren't, then I don't really mind too much, because it's kind of a tradition in fantasy MMOs. The women don't seem to mind too much, to be honest. If you are a female listener, then definitely give us your comments on this. But generally, the women that I spoke to don't really mind, or heard speak about this, they don't mind. And it's just a thing that happens in game. So yeah, let us know your comments on this, and that brings us on to our next piece of news, which is the closed beta, the press closed beta. As many of you should know, this month of February there is a closed beta going on for press, that ArenaNet have invited certain members of press and are sending out more invites over the month of February for closed beta tests. And a lot of people, as expected really, have got quite upset over this. And it's simply because they know people are playing the game and they want a piece of the action. They want to jump in, and they don't like the fact that they can't, and it's only invites, and it's not cool. However, ArenaNet have come back and said, you know, these guys aren't friends and family. These guys are press. You know, if we had enough friends to fill the amount of numbers we need, then, you know, they'll be very popular people. They don't have the amount of friends and family to do so, because a lot of people have been accusing ArenaNet of still sticking to friends and family and still sticking to press friends and etc. And they're not really opening. They're saying it's a closed beta, but it's not really. They're just dragging it out, and it's not the case at all. I mean, if you want a good open beta, or if you want a good beta event, and you want a better chance of getting into the game, I mean, the closed betas, that's what it sets up for. Closed beta sets you up for an open beta, and then the open beta sets you up for the release of the game. So, and I suppose the main thing I have with it is the NDA, because the NDA means that they're not allowed to talk about it at all. I mean, ArenaNet could have let them upload screenshots, or more screenshots even, or upload little bits of gameplay here and there, or at least something for these press sites to give us, at least an impression or anything. Because if you look at Terra Online, they're going through their closed beta tests now, and their closed beta tests, if you pre-order the game, you get into the closed beta test. That's their closed beta. I mean, you know, it's not closed off to the fans. I mean, if you're interested in the game and you're like, oh, I might buy it, then you'll probably wait till an open beta. But if you're a fan of the game, then you'll definitely, you know, pre-order the game, probably, or have already pre-ordered the game, so you get into the closed beta. So I think fans feel a little bit offended that they have absolutely no access to any information even, let alone the game, in the closed beta. And I think it's fair enough to them. But obviously Guild Wars 2 are prepping up for a massive game and a massive launch. And if they let people into the closed beta and they let NDAs get lifted and content to get put out, it kind of dampens down that that epic launch feel that they really, really need for this game to be as successful and as shocking and surprising as it wants to be. However, how they do the open beta or the beta events, how they're going to do this after this closed beta is the most important bit, I think. Because if you're desperate for the game and you don't get into the open beta, then that's going to be a big blow to the fans, and I think a lot of people around that time are going to be very, very angry, and it's not going to be cool. But I do think they will let a lot of people in. I don't think it will be hard to get a key. What I think they're going to do is dampen down the content that's open and available. I think they're going to have beta weekends, such as Terra Online are doing now, and over these different beta weekends, we're going to be allowed to access different bits of content. So it's very dictated, and it's not going to reveal the full game in all its glory to us. I think that's the best way forward for the launch to be the best possible, and I think these are the reasons why the closed beta is so NDA compared to games like Terra Online, where it's basically, if you want to be in a closed beta, you can get in. But I'm fine with it. I mean, I want to play the game as much as the next guy, but I do feel that this is the best way forward and best for improvement, and also best to get the game out quicker. Because if they're doing closed, controlled beta testing with press people, very professional people, then the open beta can come more swiftly, and it's a lot easier to manage, and the release then comes out quicker, and that's what we want. So this brings us on to our hot topic for this week, which is the Guild Wars 2 Holy Trinity system. Holy Trinity system, to sum it up, is tank, heal, and DPS. So your tank will take all the damage, your heal will heal the said tank and the DPS, and the DPS, which is damage per second, does all the damage in a situation, puts out most of the damage. Of course the tank does as well, but that's the DPS's role. So here's what Guild Wars 2 has to say about it. So in the post, they have basically said that other MMO developers are looking at the Holy Trinity system, and they feel that it's the best, the most fun. That's the best system there is. Every single game that's been put out is copying this Holy Trinity system. It's traditional. That's how MMOs are built. But Guild Wars 2 feels that it's very, very out of date. It's not as fun as people make out it to be, and their fans demand more of ArenaNet than this. They basically really look down on the system. DPS, heal, and tank just didn't cut it in their game. Their players demand more from Guild Wars 2, and instead they intend to deliver on that demand instead of delivering more of the same. The Holy Trinity system leaves out a lot of gameplay elements that make many other games so much fun. Instead, we break these Trinity categories down into a much cooler, versatile system. So as we see here, this is their goal. They want to change the way damage, tanking, and healing is done in the game, and they want it more to be about you and be about personal skill and basically self-reliance. If you're not good, then you're letting your team down. It's not the fact that if you're not being a good healer, then you're letting the team down. If you're not being a good DPS, then you're letting the team down, etc. It's more about your personal skill, how you play your character, how have you built your character, how are you going to help your team with the skills that you have on your skill bar. And not only does this change the way that fighting is done, it changes the way bosses are built. It changes the way boss fights are taken on. You're no longer going to have the same sort of tank and spank boss fights, for example. You're not going to have random, oh, don't stand in the pool of fire, because boss fights are going to be designed differently to, support this new system. I mean, imagine this. A situation where you have a boss on a throne in a massive hall. Yeah? The boss is sitting on a throne looking like a badass. In front of the boss is a load of stone statues that are just ready to be summoned to come and attack you. In the normal DPS role, or the normal Holy Trinity system role, what would happen in a 5-man dungeon? Your tank would aggro all of the adds, or these stone statues, and then the heals just blow up on the tank, while all the damage, or the DPS, then AoE down all these mobs. After that phase is over, the boss comes up, the tank taunts the boss, maybe blows a defensive cooldown or something, and then you have 3 phases of the boss fight, which all involve the tank going round and picking up adds and the damage kiting adds maybe, and etc. We all know how bosses usually go down. In Guild Wars 2 system, however, that's taken out the equation. So in exactly the same fight, what would happen? Well, you've no longer got a tank to take all these mobs, so you've got 20 stone statues running gas your 5-man group, and you have no natural way of dealing with it than what we're all used to. So what would happen now is that everyone would just have to work together to kill all these adds before everybody dies, pretty much, whether it's AoE, dodging people, splitting up the adds into 2 sections and blowing them down. Unless we've really played the game, we don't exactly know how it's going to feel. But the counter argument to this, which is the main topic really, is around the tank. Because, for example, say if you manage to get all these adds done, finished, then the main boss gets up out of his throne and casts a gigantic fireball at a single target that is closest to the throne. Now, is it called tanking if the warrior steps up and takes that blow? So he absorbs the damage, he tanks that damage. Or is it supporting the team? Now this is a very fine line, because the tank isn't exactly going to be, or the warrior isn't exactly going to be taking this boss throughout the whole fight. What would probably happen is the warrior probably quickly wield his sword and shield for that extra armor boost. The warrior has more health than the elementalist, so it's logical for the warrior to take this damage because he has the most protection against it, or the guardian, or whoever. So it's not tanking. All it is taking that blow. For example, if the 20 stone statues beat up on this warrior and he had really low health, whereas the pro elementalist in the back was kiting these statues and the elementalist had full health, then it's logical for the elementalist to take this blow and the warrior to stand back, simply because the elementalist has full health. He's the one who should take the damage because he can easily heal himself up after, whilst the warrior is recovering. And it's not exactly like the warrior's tanking it, it's only because he has the most armor, he has the most health, and in that 20 stone statue fight, he's the one that should really come out on the higher end rather than the elementalist, but that's just an example. So it's not really tanking, it's more supporting. And Arena have said that. So they wanted to take the heal out of the Holy Trinity and replace it with the word support. Healing is the least dynamic kind of support there is. It is reactive instead of proactive. Healing is for when you are already losing. Guild Wars 2, we prefer that you support your allies before they take a beating. And yes, there are healing spells in Guild Wars 2. However, they're not specific to the class. In other words, if you're an elementalist and you cast Healing Rain, that's all you've got. If someone's taking an extreme amount of damage, that Healing Rain is never going to be enough. Everyone has to pull together and buff, put down auras, cripple enemies, knock down enemies, do whatever you can to get damage off that single target and switch it up between everybody. Everybody's taking that sort of, I need to take the damage off this guy. Everyone's got each other's back. It's not just one person trying to do that tanking role. Almost everybody's trying to do the tanking role, but take out tank and put in support, and that's where it all makes sense. This is what ArenaNet have to say on tanking. This is where Guild Wars 2 makes the biggest break from the traditional MMO setup. Tanking is the most rudimentary form of the most important combat fundamental, control. Every game has it, yet it always seems to get a bad name. In Guild Wars, there was a knockdown, interrupt, weakness, blind, and a cripple, to name a few. We wanted to build upon what we think makes control such an important part of dynamic combat. So as you can see, alongside support, control is the next big one. Just because obviously, as I said before, we haven't played the game, and if you have, please, email in what you think is the game is like, whilst in a sort of 5-man situation, because it's so different to what we're used to. It's hard to get your head around just thinking about how it's going to go down. But support and control replaces healing and tanking, and that's the most logical way you can think about it. Support is putting buffs on people, putting down auras, having each other's back, taking the damage, doing logical thinking and looking at the screen instead of health bars and instead of DPS meters and skill bars. And it's looking at the screen, seeing what's going on, and looking to see where you can support your allies and how you can be a help to your team. Control is more you thinking, right, we need to get this combat situation under control. We have got 20 stone statues coming at us here. The engineer can put down a turret that takes 5 of these enemies away, whilst all of us can blow up on these 5 enemies that are coming at us first. You know, the guardian can put a big shield down to protect us. All of these different things are supporting and controlling the fight, and this is what's going to happen. It's going to be completely different to how we're used to, and it's going to be extremely exciting to see in game. And this is just from a dungeon sort of perspective, not even talking about a situation as in the dynamic events, the big dragon boss fights, where we're going to have up to like 50 people maybe sometimes, or even more, or hundreds of people. I mean, how is the Holy Trinity system, in quotations, going to come in then? It simply can't. I mean, in Warhammer Online, you had the Holy Trinity system, and similar to the dynamic events, we had public events, which were simply scaled events, scaled quest events that eventually ended up in a big boss, kind of like rifts, and the Holy Trinity system fits in there, but it's extremely unorganized. All the tanks don't know what they're doing. If the healers don't know who the tanks are, it all falls apart and everybody dies. But in this, it's taken out, so dynamic events are going to be so much more fun. But that's a completely different topic on how dynamic events might work. But this is the roundup, basically, on Holy Trinity system. Take out tank, heal, and DPS, and just put in damage, control, and support. And logically think about how fights might go down, and maybe look at the skills of different roles and abilities, etc., and try to work it out. I mean, it's going to be extremely hard without playing the game, but it's going to be extremely fun once we get into the game. So, guys, that about wraps it up for this week. I hope you enjoyed it. It was quite a hard topic to cover, as it's such an interesting one, I think. But yeah, let us know your opinion on this, and this is how I'm going to do things from now on. I'm going to have it in emails instead of comments. So the email will be in the description below. It is just philetic@gmail.com, and you can email in questions, hot topics, or more detailed comments on what you think of the show. So, because I know in the comment section a lot of you like to put quite detailed comments, and I get messages sometimes in my inbox. So instead of this, you can email it in, and then on the next show I'll have an email segment where I'll talk about all the questions that you've asked, the hot topics. I'll go over them and pick out a hot topic to talk about for that week, and go over some detailed comments that you had about the previous show, and we will talk about that. So that's how we're going to be done. So please email in your thoughts, questions, topics, and comments. And guys, thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time. All these show notes and links to everything is in the show notes. All these show notes, the links to everything is in the show notes. No, all the information is in the show notes on the blog, and I will also be in a link below on the description. And if you're not in the description, you're in the blog. So that's where all the show notes are. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you guys next week.